Hey everyone, Jim Branscombe here, back again for another edition of In the Mouth of Cinemadness, which is a sub-series of the Cinematic Boy vlog where I talk about the movies I watched, as a teenager or as a young adult that basically built the, foundation for what would eventually become Cinematic Void. So since it's January and January Giallo, I figured I'd talk about some of the instrumental Giallo films that I saw that not only, got me bigger into cult cinema, but got me into the genre itself. And I'm pretty sure that the first Giallo film I saw was 1982's Tenebrae, directed by Dario Argento. Now, this wasn't the first Argento film I saw. I ended up renting Suspiria pretty early on in my cult cinema adventures, and then I ended up seeing Inferno shortly after that because they were both widely available at, the video store. Now, at the time when I was getting into Argento films, a lot of his films were not available uncut or really available at the video store. Now, the only way I could see footage from a lot of those movies was a documentary called Dario Argento's World of Horror that was directed by Michele Soavi, who was the Argento protege and went on to direct Della Morte dell'Amore. And basically this documentary is the only way you could see like things from Tenebrae or Phenomena, or even the early stuff like Bird with the Crystal Plumage, Four Flies on Grey Velvet. Not only was this documentary very informative about Argento and his career, it also acted as a highlight reel because it included lots of the crazy camera work and the insane gore that was in a lot of his movies that wasn't widely available at the time. This documentary was the first time I actually saw the infamous axe chop from Tenebrae, where the woman gets her arm cut off and then she's like holding her bloody stump and spraying blood all over the white wall. So after seeing that, I knew I had to see Tenebrae. And thankfully, my friend Bruce Holochek, who now runs Cinema Arcana, had a bootleg VHS of it. The bootleg was taken from a Japanese Laserdisc. Now, back in the 90s, like a lot of ways you could only see uncut versions of the movie were basically if you had a Laserdisc player and you could get the Japanese Laserdisc, or if some enterprising film collector would take their Laserdisc and make a dupe and then sell you a bootleg VHS for 20 bucks. So Bruce loaned me his copy and I dubbed it, and that was the first time I saw Tenebrae. And if you've never seen basically a rip from a Japanese Laserdisc, well, the subtitles are burned in. You can't turn them off, so you have like Japanese subtitles going the whole time. And once you, get a bootleg and you're duping it, VHS degenerates every time you make a copy of it. So like by the time I got a copy of Tenebrae, it was pretty washed out. Also, it doesn't help that the movie's, the way it's shot, it's very bright and there are a lot of whites. So like, I don't even know how the fuck I watched it, but it didn't matter because I was just happy to be able to see Tenebrae. And it was quite a revelation. You get your Black Glove Killer, you get the murder mystery, you get lots of the great camera work that Argento is known for, and of course you get gore. And Tenebrae is probably his meanest and maybe most violent of all his films. Not only do you get that infamous axe chop on the arm, but you get lots more of axe violence as well as straight razor violence. So obviously it's a bloody good time. Now, probably maybe a couple years after I got that bootleg, Anchor Bay started releasing a lot of the Argento films on VHS and DVD uncut for the very first time. They put out Tenebrae, Phenomena, Deep Red, Inferno, and it was a real treat to be able to get those in better versions. Now, I've always been torn between, is Tenebrae or Deep Red my favorite Argento movie? And it's kind of like 1A for me. Like, there's times where I will definitely put Tenebrae above Deep Red, or vice versa. I usually put Deep Red slightly ahead of Tenebrae just because of, when it came out and the ramifications and the cultural impact Deep Red had. They're both similar because they're both kind of comeback movies for Argento. Deep Red came about as a kind of an answer after the flop of The 4 Days, so he went back and kind of refiltered his Animal trilogy and just beefed it up, and that's where Deep Red came from. Tenebrae came about after the success of Suspiria, but the kind of, lukewarm reception Inferno got. Basically, he was told, it's like, stop playing with witches, get back to Black Glove Killers. But, the real kind of genesis behind why Tenebrae came about is that Argento was over stateside, and I think he's staying in a hotel in Santa Monica, and he started receiving phone calls at his hotel from an obsessed fan. And it really started freaking him out because the guy started making threats and all that, so he kind of took that and filtered into Tenebrae. Now, a lot of people always think of Argento and the Suspiria lighting. Well, Tenebrae is not that at all. It's actually the antithesis of it. It's like very stark whites. It's like almost drained of color except for the red shoes and the blood. And it's a really interesting it's a different, I would say almost like meta Giallo in a way. Obviously he's taking real life stuff and filtering it through. Now, Tenebrae was always on a bucket list for me to screen when I started Cinematic Void. Actually, one of my early pitches for Cinematic Void, I had a triple feature I wanted to do. I wanted to do Dressed to Kill, Tenebrae, and New York Ripper all together, because I feel like there's a kind of rivalry you can see between Brian De Palma, Dario Argento, and Lucio Fulci featured in those three movies. And it didn't happen right away, but in 2019, as January Giallo was coming up for that year, I made a pitch where I was like, I just want to do Dressed to Kill and Tenebrae as a double feature. And the programming team at the American Cinematheque signed off on it, but they said, give us a couple more De Palma Argento mixes. This seems like a kind of a cool idea. So I ended up pitching Inferno and Blowout, and then because you want to make money, you're going to show Suspiria and Carrie. That screening did about 500 plus people at the Egyptian Theater. Star Barbara McNulty from Suspiria showed up, did a Q&A. When I did Blowout and Inferno, Irene Miracle from Inferno came out. And then as I was closing things out doing Dressed to Kill and Tenebrae, Nancy Allen was there to do a Q&A about Dressed to Kill, but she actually told me that she was originally supposed to be in Dario Argento's Inferno.
Our double feature last time was Blowout and Inferno, and you told me that you were up for the role in Inferno.
Yes, I actually went in, Dario Argento had an office at Fox, and I had a meeting with him, and I was sitting across the desk from him, and we were talking. His English was very bad, and I just was sitting there, trying to make conversation, and he literally got up from around his desk, he closed his eyeglasses in half, and held them like over one eye, like he was following me like a camera. He walked all the way around me. I just sat there. But I was, the feelings were palpable in the room, and I left there, I called my agent, I said, I think I was just sitting with someone who fell in love with me. He said, you're right, he called to hire you for the film. And so I read the script, which I hadn't even read at the time, and in my memory, it could be wrong, but I kind of remember Jimmy Woods being involved at the time, right?
Yeah, James Woods was originally supposed to be the film lead.
So there. So I wanted to work with him. He was a terrific actor. But I read the script, and there was all this underwater scenes, and I'm claustrophobic. So I thought, there's no way. There's absolutely no way I can make this movie. So I had to turn it down. And then, of course, a short time after that, I did Blowout, where I ended up underwater and freaking out there.
When I screened Tenebrae, I actually got the privilege to show Phil Blankenship's 35mm print of the film. And shout out to Phil. Phil did Heavy Midnights for many years at different venues across Los Angeles. He currently works at New Beverly. One of my favorite people, shout out to Phil. And, getting to see that on the big screen was just a thing of beauty. And after screening, I kind of had to think back to that really washed out Tenebrae VHS bootleg that was about 3 generations away from the original Japanese Laserdisc, the subtitles burned in, watching then and then being able to see it on the big screen projecting on film. It was a really great treat. So this wraps up this episode of In the Mouth of Cinemadness. Why don't you sound off the comments or hit me up on social media. Tell me what was the first Giallo film you watched. Until next time, see you in the void.